Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
8-bit Pod Smash,
Where Gaming Goes to Grab a Beer. We are your hosts.
Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right, and tonight we are starting a new series called Gaming What Ifs, and they are completely hypothetical, speculative scenarios that we pick each week, where we will discuss it and break it down, and tonight's is, what if Sony exclusives sucked?
What?
What if they were not successful, or have not been successful, and we will break down all the various times that could have been, because we're, when you say that, it's like Sony's had successful exclusives for like 25 years now, so when are we talking? We will talk through various points in their history. So yeah, we'll break all that down and get into all that, but we are where gaming goes to grab a beer. So what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking the last of my Aslan Beer Company beers, given to me by Sean, friend of the show, called How Now Brown Cow. And I've had this before on the show, I just don't remember when, but it's a milk stout brewed with coffee and maple. So it's a very wintry beverage, very, very sweet. But it does have hints of maple syrup and apples. It's very sweet. It's crazy sweet. Full bodied like you would expect from a milk stout, and like dessert. Like I feel like I'm drinking cake, but it's very good. High quality. I love it. And it is a 6% beer, so it will not light me up too much. What are you drinking?
I am drinking, it's called, I ended up making another run to Total Wine. Kind of going out of my way to do so, but it's cool. I had the first of those beers last week, so this week I'm drinking a Boulevard Brewing Company's Ginger Lemon Radler.
Ooh.
Citrus beer brewed with ginger and lemon. Doesn't have anything on the bottle except it does say, or on the can, except it does say, Bright Citrus Zing. And you know what? Like, I was trying to describe, like, it's very gingery and very lemony, and I was trying to describe, like, what it tastes like, and I think I've landed on this. It's like if you took a ginger, like, lozenge of some kind, and then popped it in your mouth at the same time as a lemon, what do you call them? Lemon drops? Lemon drops? Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Because it's very strongly of both flavors. It's really good. I like it. It's definitely sweet, definitely light. Very yellow, like it kind of looks like I just peed into a cup as I poured it in there. But like it's got that very, it's very bright and yellow. It's delicious. I love it. I'm into it. I love ginger in beer. I love ginger in alcohol as a flavor combination. I love Moscow Mules. And so, like, yes, just if you're like, oh, we put ginger in this beer, you will sell Penguin on it for the most part. So I was very excited to try this. It's like a ginger shandy. It's very good. So into it.
Little quiz for you. Do you know what a Radler is?
Nope.
It is literally a cyclist, and it takes its name from active German sportsmen of 100 years ago and what the Boulevard Brewing Company's website says, but our version tastes just as good, even if you do nothing more strenuous than lifting it to your lips.
For sure. Very cool. All right, so those are the beers we're drinking. So what is going on? What's going on? Anything you want to fill up this time with before we jump into our segments?
So I decided to go back and listen to our very first episode remote, since now, as we enter this time of vaccinations and like the pandemic's kind of moving towards its end as things are loosening restrictions and vaccines are now available to everyone who wants one, no more groups with high priority stuff. And I'd completely forgotten that there was a mask shortage at the beginning of this.
Right, yeah.
And I even made a comment, like, if I had any masks, I would donate them to a hospital immediately because they need them more than I do. And I could, like, that was just one aspect of the pandemic I completely forgotten about. And I was like, oh yeah, that was like a flash in the pan because mass production became nuts very quickly. Yeah. And then it also brought up a bunch of memories about the toilet paper and like the hand sanitizer and the sanitizing wipes and stuff that now the CDC... Right,
because back at the beginning, we didn't really know that like its primary spread was through droplets in the air, aerosolized droplets. Mm-hmm. So again, everyone was like, well, could it spread by fomite transition, which is where it's like on surfaces and stuff like that. So everyone was wiping down everything, and they made such a big deal about the businesses were like, we wipe down every surface like every 30 seconds.
Yep. Yeah. A lot has happened in a year with the pandemic, but that was just like some interesting nostalgia. Last year at this time, we were playing Final Fantasy VII Remake and Doom Eternal, and like,
oh my gosh, that was a good spring. I'm hoping this spring can compete with like I've talked about before, how there's a lot of like games with promise this spring. Maybe not. Maybe we'll never get as good of a spring as last year, because those are some bang up titles. But like, I want these titles to be as good as last year. It would be a lot of fun. So
don't forget, we had a spring where both Breath of the Wild and Horizon Zero Dawn came out.
That's true.
And we had a different spring with God of War.
Zero Dawn until I didn't have a PlayStation when HZD came out, so I didn't play it till well after it.
Nice name drop, HZD. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Or did I? Did I have a PlayStation at that point? I don't remember. I don't think I did. I don't think I got mine until after my Switch.
Yeah, you got your PS4 in 2018, according to your trophies.
All right. Word.
Yep.
HZD. Oh, didn't Nier Automata come out that spring too? Like, it came out that February. Yeah, that was a good year, man. And Persona 5 came out that year. Dude, that was a good year, 2017.
Mm-hmm.
We had some good years in gaming the last few years. I don't know what people are talking about.
Yeah, it's a great time to be alive, except for the pandemic thing.
Except for the pandemic, the political upheaval,
other than all of that.
The world being destroyed, global warming, whatever, it's fine.
I will also talk about
great games.
Another random tidbit about my video game collection that I continue to grow. I was given a bunch of stuff again from a coworker who was leaving, and in that box was 2 more Wavebird controllers and no receivers. And to my delight, in the past, someone had given me receivers and no controllers. So I was finally able to match those pairs together, and now I have 6 GameCube Wavebirds that I can rotate through when we have Smash Days, so that they all kind of wear out a little less at a time because you're using them less frequently. So I'm excited about that. I have lots of
Smash Days. Now. What are Smash Days?
It's the days where this is a family-friendly podcast, so we're going to talk about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and the.
Yeah, I was wondering where you're going to go with that. Oh man, we are going to have one though. It's coming up.
Yeah, we sure are
this weekend. That's exciting. Yep,
it is.
We're all a handful of us friends are all vaccinated, not fully yet for some of us, but enough where we're comfortable getting together. I'm sorry that my first shot has gotten me more well protected than your only shot. Sorry about it. I'm gonna get another shot that'll just bump me up even higher. Oh man, have they talked about whether or not you can get like multiple vaccines?
No one has said anything about it, but I know my wife, who's like medically knowledgeable, would say that that's not a good idea.
Fair. But like, if you added the 95% from the Moderna to the 95% of the Pfizer, that's like 190% effective.
At that point, you give it to people.
No, you take it from other people.
Oh, that's right. More. You're a vacuum. You just take it from everyone
and just destroy it.
Yeah.
Just crushing COVID. I love it. I can update the audience. I was able to snag a pretty good deal on a replacement TV for the one that I lost. So it is actually of the same generation of TVs as my last one, the Vizio, what's it called? Vizio Quantum M series. That's what they're called. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the last one I had that you have is an MQ7, and I got my hands on MQ8 for $4.99. Yeah, $4.99. So the MQ7 at the time was on sale for $4.79. So for $20 more, I got the higher up model. Ironically, it's actually less good in some stats than the MQ7, but it's fine. It's very, very vivid colors, which I like about it. Very, very, the colors and the HDR really pop on the MQ8 in a way that I didn't quite notice the same with the MQ7. So kind of, but it's also been a while because it looks better than the 1080p TV is all I'm saying that I had there before. Mm-hmm. So I'm much more confident in my hang job, but I have this sort of paranoia. I did a pull up on it, but I've got this sort of paranoia now. Like, it's happened to me once, and once is enough to like have it sort of ingrained in your head. So I definitely do little TV checks. I walk by the TV and I give it a little tug,
nice.
Periodically, because I'm like, if I had done that before, I might have caught it. So maybe it's overly paranoid, maybe it's overly like OCD, but it is a ritual now that I occasionally do just to put myself at ease, just because, we dodged a bullet, right? Like, no one got hurt. And that's the thing that bothers me more. Like, if I lost another TV, if it fell and just broke again, like, I would be very, very, very disappointed, but like, no one would be hurt. And no one was hurt last time, but I just can't get the mental image of a TV falling on my 2-year-old's head out of my head. So, to appease that little paranoid part of me, that little parent part of my brain, they can't stop thinking about it, I just give the TV a little tug. Just a little tug every once in a while. But, so it's great. It's nice to be kind of back there. It sucks to have lost that $400. That's a completely sunk cost, and that sucks. But at the very least, back in business and having a good time. So with it.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Can I give you a public service announcement about your TV?
Sure.
So when you have HDR, you can calibrate what HDR looks like on your PlayStation 5. You can also do it on your Xbox Series X. There's tools on the console to calibrate your TV. What this means is that you have to tell the console what the minimum and maximum brightness is on your TV that it can handle. So there's this feature on your TV in the menu settings itself. Whenever HDR is enabled, you can go into Picture, and there's a feature called Tone Mapping. When you're calibrating your TV, make sure tone mapping is all the way at 0. And then calibrate your TV, and then turn the tone mapping up to your liking. And there's a whole bunch of weird, like, some TVs are brighter than others, and so there's no standard across all the different television makers, and it's a way to map and scale the brightnesses to the max brightness and darknesses to the darknesses of it to make it look right. But I was mixing those things up, and I discovered this issue trying to play the Resident Evil 8 demo, the Resident Evil Village demo, when it asked me to adjust this slide bar in-game till that one of the boxes was barely visible, and adjusting the bar from the worst or the darkest to the lightest made no difference in any of the images.
Oh, no.
And I was like, well, something's obviously off. I'm adjusting this slider all the way and nothing. And it's because I failed to turn tone mapping off entirely, went back to do the calibrate HDR, and I actually went back to an Xbox game to test this. It was Gears of War 5. And adjusted the HDR there. And same thing happened earlier where the adjustments did nothing, but after I calibrated everything correctly, I could actually make fine-tuner adjustments per title, because each game is also different. It's a pain. But public service announcement, turn tone mapping off, do your calibration, then turn it back on.
Nice. Okay. Yep. I'll have you walk me through that later, because my brain doesn't work half the time.
ADHD is one heck of a thing.
I need it in front of me. I need to see it in front of me to understand it and walk through it. It's fine. It'll be all right. We'll get on.
Our audience members who are driving in their car or mowing their grass got it. They nailed it because they're like focused.
Yeah, for sure. They'll help them walk me through it. Then how about that? You guys give me a call, walk me through it. We'll figure it out. All right. Well, adjusting settings on our new TVs is our favorite thing, but also
doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Favorite Things is a segment of our show where we talk about something we're digging this week. Something that elated us, gave us a good experience. It could be as shallow as you got a check in the mail to as deep and meaningful as you had an adult dinner with your wife or spouse or significant other or husband or whatever you would like.
An adult dinner.
Yeah, because you can tell I'm a dad.
As opposed to just
we don't
a
get
dinner.
out. The adult dinner is undistracted dinner between
not
two
chicken nuggets, right? Gotcha. Uh-huh.
Right, yeah, and adult food. Yes, this is adult food and adult company only. It's adult dinner. I would stretch that to as meaningful as like having people over, because that's kind of a new thing again.
Oh yeah,
mm-hmm. Having people over for adult dinner where you have adult food with adult beverages.
All right, my favorite thing is I discovered a new design. So some context. I was away a lot last week. Away from home. My team lead was flown into town. He lives in Kansas, and he was flown into town. So in an effort to get to know him a little bit better, and be able to work with him a lot better, just general things like team bonding and stuff like that, and also get him to like me better so that I can increase my prospects. There's that. So that's how I sold it to my wife. It wasn't necessarily a manipulative thing. It was just more or less like she agreed, like, get out, get to know him. Who knows if it could contribute to a promotion down the line. So she was on board, but it also meant that I was away from the house, going out with him and going out for dinner and drinks and stuff like that on a couple of different nights. So one of those, and there was also a night where I had to actually go back out because I forgot to do something, forgot to ship a laptop or something like that needed to be there by the other day or whatever. So on that day where I had already been out, already been gone all day, and then I came back and had to go out again, on that day I treated both myself and my wife I wanted to treat us to dessert. So I Googled, after I dropped off the package I needed to, I Googled nearby dessert places, just sort of expecting to find maybe it's like a nice ice cream place nearby or something. What I found was a place, and I'm so mad at myself because I'm blanking on what it was called, but it was like Sweet Desserts Shop or something like that. Okay. And it was just on it was in Glen Allen, so kind of like the northern end of Richmond, but not quite in Ashland. And it they had just like huge, massive pieces of cake, which is
Ooh.
what kind of sold me on it. So like for like $10, my wife and I each got a piece of cake that each lasted us 3 different nights. Like it was like basically like 6. It felt like 6 servings because we would eat like a serving for like 6 between the two of us 6 various nights. Anyways, we got like it was like a unicorn sprinkle cake. It was like the like froofiest cake I could get, but I was like sprinkles. But part of me was like it's mostly just like vanilla, like yellow cake and vanilla buttercream, and with sprinkles, sure. But like if they can't get vanilla cake and buttercream right, then we're never going back.
Right.
They got it right. It was fine. It was a great piece of cake, and it was my favorite thing. And now I happened to go there on double punch day, so she gave me a double punch, like a card with double punches, and 10 gets you a free piece of cake or something like that.
Ooh.
And so now I'm like, all right, Thursday ritual, we're getting us cake. We're trying all the cake flavors.
Yes.
So it's,
does this place have like a brewery vibe to it?
It does. Yeah. No, it was like a dessert. They called it a dessert bar, and they actually had taps.
Sugar sweet?
Bottles of sugar sweet. That is it. Yeah, you found it.
I am looking it up. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It looks amazing.
Yeah, they've got like I really want to go there sometime. We should go on a double date there sometime.
Ooh,
but
double
like
dates.
Yeah, because you can get beer. They've got tap. They've got bottles, and then also they've got. I want to go in person because they have like cookie skillets with ice cream on top.
I'm just about to ask you about it. I see it in front of me.
I want to get that, but I didn't want to I didn't want them to put ice cream on a hot cookie and then me transport it, 40 minutes home or whatever.
This looks so good.
Yeah, it's awesome. So this little place, I just sort of discovered it because I wanted to treat my wife to some dessert and wanted to know what was nearby, and it just happened to come up on a Google search, and I was like, this place is rocking. So really great cake. So if you're in the Richmond area and you live or even are coming to the Richmond area at any point, you should check out Sugar Sweet Dessert Bar. It's awesome.
Yes. I need that in my life.
Word.
All right. My favorite thing is, speaking of 4K TVs and all those things, the trailer for Fast 9 dropped this week, and I watched it, of course. And I immediately marked June 25th on my calendar. I then went to Amazon and I picked up the 4K 8-movie collection of the entire Fast and Furious franchise, and I'm making it a point to watch all 8 movies and their spin-offs, including Hobbs and Shaw, between now and June 25th, so that I am ready with a fresh memory and a fresh brain. I am so excited about Fast and Furious. So what my actual favorite thing is Fast and Furious 1 in 4K. I have never watched a 4K Blu-ray before. Like, this was the first time I'd put a 4K Blu-ray in my PlayStation 5, and I was blown away by the fact that they could make a movie from 2001 look as good as it does. It was awesome. But also, the nostalgia and the feels of Fast and Furious 1 brought me right back to high school, and I thoroughly enjoyed that movie. I might have seen it. It's in, like, my top 5 most seen movies of my life. I absolutely love that movie, and my love for it has not changed after watching it as a 34-year-old father, because life changes and your perspectives change, and everything, your outlook on the world changes as you grow up. And sometimes revisiting old movies, you'll like them less or more. This one I love even more. I loved the first movie so much, and I'm so excited about getting through all of them now. And I highly recommend 4K Blu-rays. If they've done right, I guess each studio is whatever. But man, it's so sharp. I am so happy with that TV. It's the best amount of money I've ever spent on a TV yet. And the one I had prior to that was a 73-inch 1080p 3D TV from 2010. And it was like a rear projection TV, and it was $1,800. And that was like ridiculously cheap for the size.
Yeah,
and I wanted to fill my basement. Yeah. Which shows how like the prices on TVs have dramatically decreased and the quality has increased. So I have a 4K TV that costs $600, and it's not a 73-inch size. It's the Vizio, like you said. And I love it so much. The colors pop. Everything's super sharp. The darks look good. There's no motion blur. And the PlayStation 5 plays 4K Blu-rays. So all of that is amazing. Have you ever seen these movies?
Fast and Furious?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen our Pastor Gordon. Didn't he host like a Fast and Furious? It wasn't Hobbs and Shaw. It was another one. It was the one whenever one came about before that.
Fate of the Furious?
That's it. I think that's it. It was the one where one of them was the bad guy. Shaw was the bad guy. And
Gotcha.
Yeah. Anyways, it was fine. It's not my cup of tea, but it's fine. I get like it's a dumb action movie, and that's what's appealing about it.
Yep.
But it's I'm not a car guy, so I'm like, okay, But I was gonna say that I have movies like that that you're talking about, where it's like I change and you go back and watch shows or movies that you watched as a young person. You're like, eh. But then there's some that you're like, this will never ever be bad to me. And like the ones that come to mind for me are, of course, Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yes, that's next on my list of 4K Blu-rays to buy.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
And then the other one on my list is the original Jurassic Park movie. It's a perfect movie. Will never be bad.
It will never be bad. It is aged so well. Like even the special effects. Like we saw it. There was a re-release in theaters probably in like 2014 or 15, and it was 3D. So they had the 3D glasses and all. And I was like, I really love Jurassic Park, but I really don't like 3D a lot. So here it is. I'll give this a try. I'll try it. And I thought the 3D like 4K projectors that were all new at the time would have like made it so that it kind of exposed its flaws more. And no, there was none. It was amazing. It held up so well. I was blown away by how old the movie was and how new it looked. It was like, wow. Yeah, Jurassic Park is perfect. It's a perfect movie.
It's a perfect movie. It's amazing. All right, cool. So that wraps up our segment Favorite Things, which leads us to our next segment, which is DLC, stands for downloadable content. It's a segment of our show where we have a conversation you wouldn't normally have about video games that is maybe related to our topic, maybe not. And it's not. I'm actually riffing off of your favorite things here, though, and talking about Fast and the Furious reminds me that I'm not really much of a car guy. And I've had that fact on my mind recently, because my kid is obsessed with anything that has wheels on it. He loves tractors. He loves school buses. He loves race cars. He even loves his the stroller. And, like, he just everything with wheels. You
got a little NASCAR racer on your hands.
And go vroom, vroom.
Let's go go-karting with him.
Vroom.
Yeah, let's do this.
Right?
Yep.
So I recently was toying with this thought that, like, at some point I'm going to have to give the kid an honest chance to like racing games. Even if I don't like them, it's fair for me to expose him to racing. If I'm going to be exposing him to video games it's only fair to expose him to video games that he might like. So at some point, and so the obvious low-hanging fruit is Mario Kart. But I've toyed with the notion of being like, well, maybe I'll just have, like, maybe if he's really into racing games and wants more, then maybe I'll just like send him to Mr. Danny Racing Game Boot Camp to give him the rundown of all the best racing games for him to get into. But that's not the DLC. The DLC is... I know, I'm sorry.
You're the worst.
Conversation for another time. That was a tease. The DLC, though, is... Because you also have a kid, or kids. I don't know how Jude is, but I know Sam was also into cars and stuff like that a lot, too. Mm-hmm. And so I know you have a bunch of car toys in your house. So... Yes. Hypothetically, if there was a racing game that existed where all the cars that were driven were children's toys, which of your kids' vehicles would you want to drive in that video game in order to beat your friends in a race?
Oh, my son has these, of course, a giant collection of Hot Wheels. And there's this one, like, sick, nasty-looking, amazing Lamborghini dark blue style, like, ridiculous, out-of-the-future, absolutely insanely fast-looking car. That's the one I would drive.
That's it?
Yeah, it looks ridiculous. It's super aerodynamic and it's dark blue and gorgeous.
Nice. My son has a school bus. It's one of his favorite. It's probably his favorite toy right now. Is he loves his school bus. He loves school buses in general. Like he always, we take him for a stroller around their neighborhood. One of our neighbors has, like, I guess they're school bus drivers, so they park their school buses like at a cul-de-sac or whatever. So he always wants to go see the school buses. He's super obsessed with school buses, but the reason why I would choose the school bus is because the toy that he has drive the school bus is none other than a little cute Cthulhu toy that I got him. It's a little cute Cthulhu, and he loves Cthulhu drives the bus. That's what he always says. He calls it Kubaloo. He goes, Kubaloo driving the bus. So that would be the one I would choose. I would drive the school bus that's driven by Cthulhu himself. Because yes, it's a school bus. It's kind of like the Bowser choice. Probably not that fast. Really heavy, could knock other vehicles off the road. But I would, again, since this is a game about children racing toys, then obviously all the children rules are at play here. So obviously Cthulhu would be driving everywhere. He'd have a little aura of madness around his school bus. So that is my kid's toy. I know it's kind of combining two toys, which made some people think maybe unfair, but it's cheater. Fine. I'm going for it. These are playground rules, son. This is playground rules DLC right here.
I do believe that there was a school bus in Cruisin' USA, which I have for N64, that you could race. That's the thing. There was also a school bus on the cover of Vigilante 8 for the original PlayStation. So there's that, which is like a vehicular combat game. So I don't have that.
Was there a school bus? Do you remember the Simpsons car game? What was it called?
Hit and Run?
Hit and Run, yeah. Was there a school bus in that?
Yep.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I imagine that would be good. Was there a school bus in Twisted Metal? Like an evil school bus?
No. Let's see. Twisted. I'm gonna Google this. Twisted Metal school bus. I want to say there was, but who knows? I don't.
I'm just that's rife for puns. That's rife for puns right there.
It seems like it would be. There's no obvious choice here. It looks like there's a bunch of hits, but none of them are like clear. Twisted Metal school bus. So I'm going to say no, or off the top of my head, no.
All right, we have a little bit of time before DLC should be wrapping up, so I'll throw you a bone. You have 3 racing games you can introduce my son to post Mario Kart.
Diddy Kong Racing for N64. That's going to happen. Cruisin' USA, also on the N64. But we'll probably go back to, I have an SNES Classic, which has a copy of Stunt Racer FX on it. And Stunt Racer FX has cars with like googly eyes on it. It's very kid-friendly, and it's like pseudo 3D because it was pushing the hard limits of the SNES. And those were my childhood formative years shaping love for video games.
Yeah.
And then when Gavin's a teenager, he's playing Gran Turismo 3 and 4 with me on PlayStation 2.
I approve of these choices only because your first choices weren't the like Gran Turismo, Forza Motorsport, any of those.
Well, yeah, you have to.
Your first choices were like right.
Right,
like classics on the old consoles. I appreciate.
You got to get the arcade racing game type stuff. I mean, I have like Top Gear 1 and 2 on Super Nintendo. I have racing games across all the generations. Like I love racing games.
Nice. All right, that's DLC. So we want to hear what your thoughts are. What if you are a parent? If you're not a parent, that's fine. You could go to next time you're at the Walmart or Toys R Us or whatever, and you're walking past the toys. Take a second to walk through the one with cars, and then tell us what one of those cars you would want to play against us in a racing game to beat us. Because you don't have to be a parent to have encounters with children's toys. So we want to hear those thoughts and more. Termite, where can they share those thoughts with us?
You can find us at 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website with links to all of our social media outlets where you can find us, comment, ask questions, tag us, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit. We have a Discord server in the links of all of our show notes, as well as our Facebook posts and at 80bitpodsmash.com. So you can find us on Discord, interact with our community, and start conversations of your own. And you can also find us, we do have a podcast, this one right here, that goes live every midnight at Monday, on Mondays at midnight. Who can talk? Who knows? We have beer and talk fast, and it doesn't work. But here I am. So
I have talk fast, and we do beer.
Yes. Episodes go live every single Monday, so make sure you hit subscribe on any of your podcast platform of choice. We have Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Apple Play, or Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and if we're not on a platform you would like us to be on, let us know, and we'll put ourselves there. Otherwise, our RSS feed link is available. All of that, everything I just spewed, is just go to 80bitpodsmash.com. You'll see all the links there. Everything you need to know about us is all there.
Huzzah! All right. So today's episode, it actually kind of is like a big old DLC in and of itself. It's very speculative. Yep. It's going to be very I almost said not factual. But it's going to be factual, but it's not going to be true to the reality necessarily that we live in. It's sort of thinking about like an alternate reality. So what we're talking about, again, it's a new series. We're going to try to do a bunch of different of these. So if you have ideas after listening to this one, then please head them our way. But we're going to do a series of gaming what-ifs, where we kind of take a question and what if something were different in the gaming industry than it is now. So this week's what if is, what if Sony exclusives were flops? What if they were not successful? What if they sucked? And so we'll break that down. But the reason we're talking about this is because it's well known that Sony's strategy for the last, I don't know, at least 10 years, if not longer, has been to acquire studios and produce high-quality blockbuster hits that sell well and get people to buy the hardware because you can only play them on PlayStation. That has been their strategy, and it's been a strategy that works, but it really is a foundational strategy for them. And we recently came across a Jason Schreier article that was talking about how Sony seems to be relying so much on that strategy that they're starting to become more and more risk averse and putting less and less, untested, untried studios on new ideas, and instead really leaning more heavily on their, heavy hitters, Naughty Dog, Insomniac, etc., to, give the titles that they know are going to sell. So, since that does seem to be such a foundational pillar of their strategy, I wanted to kind of break it down and cut it off at the knees and say, what if there's a universe out there where their exclusives weren't doing so well and therefore potentially forcing them to rely on different strategies? What does that look like? So we're going to break that down. So, taking that first question, what would it look like if Sony's exclusives sucked? Let's talk about any or all of the previous exclusives going as far back as you'd like. Let's start with existing exclusives then, not a hypothetical. What if all of their next line of exclusives? We'll tackle that next, but let's look at the exclusives that we know exist and that they have. And you can pick any point in time. You can go back as far as the PS1 exclusives back in the mid 90s. You could cut them off at the 2000s. You can go as the PlayStation 4 or even the last couple of years. But let's start talking about like different points in times in Sony's life. What would it look like if their exclusives sucked? What would it mean for those franchises, etc.?
Man, you could almost have an entire episode breaking down each time slot. Like, what if PlayStation started sucking in PlayStation 1?
Right.
What did that landscape look like, and what would that go going forward? Same with PS2 and PS3 and PS4. So I am going to choose one. I'm going to narrow this down because I think this is the lowest hanging fruit. And I'm going to start with the PlayStation 3. That was the biggest blunder for Sony. It was when they finally had the misstep of doing their own thing in a super expensive, buttoned-up way and not communicating with their fans and having archaic online infrastructure compared to Xbox. And they spent that entire generation playing catch-up, and they ultimately did, and they outsold the Xbox 360 by the end of that generation. But they solidified themselves so hard with some of the things that brought them into the PlayStation 4, which really is the grandfather to games like Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War and stuff that has pushed the PS4 past what they're at now. And if you look at their best-selling games on the PlayStation 3, you see Grand Theft Auto 5, Gran Turismo 5, but then you have The Last of Us, Uncharted 3, Uncharted 2. So of the top 5, 3 of them belong to Naughty Dog. And then you have Metal Gear Solid 4 in the 6th spot. And then you have God of War 3 at 9th and Gran Turismo 6 in 10th. I didn't realize Gran Turismo sold that well in general, but having God of War and 3 Naughty Dog titles in the top 10 the top 10 sold games across the entire generation of PlayStation 3. That's third party and everything, because the first Call of Duty isn't until the 11th slot. But of course, Grand Theft Auto 5 being third party is first place. So what if Naughty Dog dropped the ball at the Uncharted Last of Us intersection in their road? Because They had Jak and Daxter. They nailed that on the PlayStation 2. And that was more kind of Crash Bandicoot-esque, cartoony, platforming, fun, lighthearted, and artsy. And they switched gears, Naughty Dog did, to the more cinematic, sort of realistic, but more movie kind of set-piece entertainment, like epic storylines. And if those flopped and Microsoft ran away with the 360 and they didn't have The Last of Us Part 2 or Uncharted 4 to fall back on to bring sales to the PS4, this is the greatest interesting point in this conversation, is that the Xbox, having Phil Spencer at the head, would have ran away with the Xbox One generation, which they flopped initially. And that's like, so it's really, this is a crazy what if scenario. But if those games didn't have the draw to PlayStation, then the PlayStation 4 wouldn't have had the draw that it did, and Xbox would have had more. And then, of course, Xbox One X coming out, being like the best 4K console that you could get at the time with the half steps, that would have, maybe they could have courted Naughty Dog.
Yeah,
and they went to Microsoft.
Sure, yeah, and it would have I think it would have hurt the idea. Exclusives were already a controversial thing at that, so if we are narrowing into that time period of the sort of late 2000s, early 2010s, and that era of exclusives for PlayStation, I mean, if you think about it, that's such a crucial time because people were already, PC was definitely being seen as a more viable format at that time for gaming. Steam was killing it, Blizzard was killing it, and Microsoft was killing it too. And as we know, Microsoft would eventually go around to, having dual releases, where they are now, where it's, play on PC, play on Xbox, we don't care. So this was kind of a turning point, right? Like, and those exclusives, I would say Uncharted, God of War, the ones you listed, Gran Turismo even, like those were the ones that carried the PlayStation and Sony, and the idea of exclusive content for consoles, like through that storm and allowed them to weather, where then they would come out with the PlayStation 4, which would then solidify the idea that exclusives move hardware and it are a viable business strategy. So I definitely agree with you that like that was such a crucial time for them to kind of weather the trend, because the trend was against them at that point in time.
Yeah.
So if those had flopped or those had bombed, then yeah, I definitely could see alternate universe where the last generation, the PS4 or the Xbox One generation, you saw a lot more, like you said, a lot more studios going, kind of maintaining their independence and autonomy, releasing on multiple platforms or on all platforms, and kind of the death of exclusivity. So that was a great pull.
And I'm not done yet. I have one more point. Another reason why I picked the PlayStation 3, when we talk about exclusives and answering this question about Sony exclusives specifically, the PlayStation 3's hardware platform, the cell processor, was so ridiculously difficult to program that third-party studios didn't favor or put time or attention on that console platform. Yeah. And so games ran worse on them. And I remember like Fight Night Round 3 was a joke. It was a launch game, but it also came out on Xbox. And then like Rainbow Six Vegas was one of the shooters, and continuing on through that whole generation, like Ubisoft and EA and other third-party publishers, they didn't really care or put too much love or care into the PlayStation 3 model because of how hard it was and how much money it took, development time, to make the games optimize and work correctly, which meant the only reason the PlayStation 3 was successful is because of standing up new studios to make really, really good first-party games. And we had a whole slew of new PlayStation IP, stuff like Heavy Rain, Resistance, Killzone 2 and 3, which Killzone 1 started on PS2, the Infamous series, Demon Souls, all of those games, like, and Ratchet and Clank, of course, continued through the PlayStation 3, and MotorStorm, like, all of those were first-party, really, really good games, but it just shows the quality and how amazing they were to bring the console back from the sidelines up to the forefront to actually outsell and outpace the 360, given how hard it was to program for. So it really, really highlights how successful Sony's first parties are, because it's the only reason the PlayStation 4 was successful as it is. Yeah. And so if you do choose that timeline, the PlayStation 3, and their first party exclusives sucked, there might not have been a PlayStation 4 at all. Right. It would have been really, really bad.
Or the PlayStation 4 would have been struggling. Yeah, it would have been the struggling console that generation for sure.
And Sony makes TVs and sound equipment and
Sony
movies.
Would have been fine.
They have
like company.
Publishing, and so there was even one conversation back in 2014, and I don't remember the details. I just remember the date for some reason, about whether the games division was even viable at all. Sony had choices, like just gut this thing and be done. And no, because the PlayStation 4 was so successful, and it's because of first-party games. So had that not happened, and then I guess if there's anything else you want to add, we can go into our next question about how that shaped the video game industry as a whole.
No, I want to stay in this space for a little bit. I want to ask kind of a sort of side question that I kind of forgot to add to this question, and that's, what do you think it would have looked like for those games to suck? Like, what would it have taken for those games to suck? Like, what specific choices? Because we can just sort of say a general idea of like, oh, like, what if they sucked? But what does that mean for a game to flop? Comparing it to other flops. So, it can, and this can widen out. You don't have to pick a specific time. You can pick any of the, but just kind of general. Give me some ideas to like what would Uncharted have looked like if it sucked? I think the easiest way for Uncharted to have bombed would have been if it were a buggy mess. If the controls were already rough.
The first one, really.
The first one, yeah. And if you had coupled in some like Mario Sunshine level bugs, it doesn't matter how good the story was, people would have been too frustrated to finish it. I think that's an easy low hanging fruit. I think The Last of Us could have bombed if it wasn't so carefully written. Like, Last of Us was just a few dialogue lines away from being like campy and cheesy in the way, like how self serious it was and everything like that. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's an easy one. God of War is a little bit harder because I love it so much. It's a little bit harder for me to pin down like how it could have gone bad. The new one could have gone bad in a lot of different ways, but the old one, I mean, did what it did well. I guess if Kratos, that characterization wasn't written as well in the first ones, if they had made him cheesy in any way, then it could have been bad. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on some of those ideas?
Like these games you mentioned, Uncharted and God of War 3, had a unique way of merging like filmography, cinematics, and like camera skills, and like the framing and pacing of the plot, and raising and lowering of the tension in the game, and like the plots that were written, that pulled that unique thread in gaming that had not really been done very well a lot. I mean, Gears of War was an amazing game that did just that on the 360. So I don't want to negate everything the 360 was doing. And same with Halo 3 and Fable 2 and 3. So Xbox was killing it in this regard too, but it was kind of a trend in the industry that PlayStation stood out as a bastion of quality. These things were not buggy. There was no random clipping messes. Occasionally you would get like the hilarity of the ragdoll effects when you die or whatever. But these games had great motion capture mixed with great voice over work. You could tell they had higher budgets, higher quality, and they were just hitting the trends at the time and really nailing that market share that they were going for. And that was the us generation, the you and me, like the millennials that were in their 20s with a little bit more expendable income post-college, going into the career field and able to afford more stuff. And knowing that these games were single-player experiences, they didn't need all the multiplayer things. They were leaning on their strengths. Microsoft had multiplayer covered. They had it covered very well. Xbox Live was impossible to compete with. So Sony went the other direction. Let's let gamers sit in their living rooms in single-player mode and play the most amazing experiences you can get that pulls emotional heartstrings, that will tug at all of that stuff and stimulate the brain and evoke thought and emotion. And they just push that direction of storytelling and creativity more than the competition was doing. So for them to suck, it would just be like a failure anywhere. It could be a failure in voice acting, a failure in motion capture, a failure
or
in
it could
mechanics.
be a failure in ham-fisting, even more so ham-fisting multiplayer modes into their games that don't need multiplayer. Could you imagine if Santa Monica had been like God of War 3 now with multiplayer?
Yep.
It's a bunch of Kratoses hitting, hack and slashing each other online. That would be ridiculous.
I know you weren't really in the console space, especially with PlayStation 3, but there were multiplayer passes that were added to the games, and when you bought it physically new, it would come with a code to let you access the multiplayer features for free. But if you bought it used and that code wasn't there, you had to pay a fee to play online. And this was before they started charging a monthly fee for their PlayStation stuff. So there was PlayStation Plus, which was always optional. You didn't need to have it to play online with friends, but you did have to have this game online multiplayer pass code thing. And so you had to pay per title if you didn't have it new. It was a weird...
ridiculous, yeah.
It didn't make any sense, and it's as bad as it sounds.
Yeah, weird. What would it take, in the same line of thought, what would it take for upcoming exclusives to suck? What would those, think about their upcoming exclusives or, their hypothetical upcoming exclusives, God of War 5 is coming out. We know we're pretty confident there will be a God of War 6, right? So, what would, not just the direct ones that we know are coming out, but even the ones after that, what do those games look like if they suck?
I mean, Cyberpunk's the perfect example, right? It's the buggy mess. It wasn't really rushed. It was just not done. It's 6 years in the making or more for Cyberpunk to come out, and it didn't work right on the hardware. It was obviously pushing everything too far, and it was just a buggy mess. And even with a good story, good writing, and voice acting, and characters behind the scenes, it's the technology up front that failed. And so PlayStation 5 is a new console, and it's got a lot of power. So maybe the next generation of PlayStation titles, that's the risk. That's maybe the next Ratchet sucks because it's buggy and the solid state's not optimized, and so it loads too fast and the player flies into nothing or something. Who knows?
Yeah, they're not.
They have to nail
it's always
stuff.
possible that it's not as powerful as the developers think it is. Yep. And it's not as, Demon Souls looked and loaded great, but Demon Souls was a remake of an old game. You know what I mean? The bones of that game were not particularly demanding for, even though it looks great and they cleaned it up beautifully. Blue Point did a wonderful job. It's really the only exclusive title we see that really takes advantage right now of that hardware. And it's not that demanding. So I think Ratchet will be the first big test of that hardware. Can it handle it? And does it work well? If it does, if it nails it, knocks it out of the park, it's a bright new world for Sony. You know what I mean? It's a whole new world of gaming for Sony fans. If it sucks, it's danger. They're in danger territory of is this entire generation going to suck? We'll see. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Cool. All right, then how would Sony's crappy, in the theoretical world full of crappy Sony exclusives, how would that affect the gaming industry? And how do you think it would change Sony's strategy in order to be competitive?
If Sony had flopped and they didn't have a space it would clear the market space for these giant single player like set piece kind of experiences, and someone would fill that gap. So maybe that someone would have been Microsoft, which would be the obvious guess. And that paired with the Game Pass strategy that they have, they would have clinched the entire video game industry on the console side, and it would be Nintendo versus Microsoft, and Sony wouldn't have a leg to stand on. That would have been it for them. And
Interesting. I think they would have. The opposite might have happened. The opposite of that being that Sony pivoted more into multiplayer experiences, and that we did potentially see the death of, because that was being talked about, at that time in that PlayStation, the cross generation transition between PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, and even well into the PlayStation 4's lifestyle, there was all that talk about is single player gaming dead, and Sony proved them wrong. So Sony wasn't around to prove them wrong. Then Sony may have pivoted into more multiplayer experiences, and the gaming industry in general. It might have been, I don't think that they would have gone extinct in the last 10 years under those circumstances, but they may have been a lot fewer and far between good quality blockbuster single player experiences.
Yeah, that's a good take too. Definitely. Everything's going to the microtransaction, games as a service, like big, always online, seasons, kind of road maps. Those are all the buzzwords we see in, Fallout 76, Sea of Thieves, Destiny. They all do it. They're all there. Mm-hmm. You're right. They probably would not have favored single player as much. And I wonder what that would have done to push multiplayer to new heights, maybe? Maybe there's still...
Maybe it's that, or maybe you just would have seen a mass exodus of gamers looking for those experiences. You know what I mean?
Even crazier, maybe the console existence is centered around the success of Sony's first-party single-player games, because there was talk back in the PS3 era of, especially in 2008, with the market decline and the crazy economic fallout and the dip that we had, the recession, right? The Great Recession. Mm-hmm. People couldn't afford games, and so consoles were on the chopping block, and the way things were going, consoles didn't look like they were going to exist anymore. The PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 would have been the last generation of consoles, and if it wasn't for Sony showing everyone what consoles could do and what we could experience on them, and knowing how Microsoft was already kind of a glorified PC anyway, maybe Microsoft would have moved on to the Windows integration and Sony would not have succeeded, and then or Nintendo would just kind of exist as their own blue ocean like they do now.
Yeah.
And we might not even have consoles.
Yeah, well, I could also see that line of thinking extending to the idea of just sort of this, exclusive space where you can only play games on one type of thing. Maybe Sony would still have been around, but pushing their software out to more platforms, surviving that way. Maybe even still with single player exclusives, but just, partnering with more platforms, maybe even partnering with more developers to work on those games, or even allowing their studios or selling their studios, and those studios becoming third-party studios like Santa Monica and Naughty Dog. So that we would have seen less console. We may have still seen PlayStation 4, but with less console exclusivity. And Sony, we may have seen a hastening of the idea of the Netflix for games that we're seeing now with Game Pass. Because if there's no exclusivity, then, or if there's less exclusivity, then there's a more chance that we see those kinds of services crop up. Because there's no incentive to necessarily buy a console and buy into one platform when you can just buy into a service and get all those games, like that. So I don't know. I could definitely see Microsoft's strategy that we're starting to see kind of come to fruition now. I could see that taking off a lot sooner than it did in reality if Sony's exclusives had bombed.
Continuing that discussion about Microsoft, even when they had announced that Xbox One, and famously, we're probably going to do another episode in this series about Microsoft and doing just that, but they had their famous flop about Call of Duty, TV, DVR, sports, Xbox One, digital only, we're not going to share games anymore, DRM. They were already pushing the envelope, because that sounds more normal today, given that there are now consoles with no disk drives and the digital marketplace is huge. But at the time, the idea of buying a game day one digitally, it was kind of still very new, and it had Sony not taken their strategy and let Microsoft run wild with that, that would completely have changed. Even it would have pushed the digital platforms farther faster. And so maybe we would be here in 2021 with more ubiquitous digital media than we have. And we know that digital media is eating physical's lunch. Like GameStop is struggling because no one's buying physical games anymore. At least it's, the percentage of sales for digital games is dramatically increasing at a rate. It's going up nuts every single year. And so maybe that would have been pushed forward in time, and discs would have been less now. There'd be fewer physical media out there.
Yeah.
And that could have been done. Like Sony affected that in some way. Nintendo's still doing their Switch, still having their cartridges and doing their thing. But as far as the rest of the gaming industry, like PC's gone digital since Steam happened. So Microsoft would have just jumped right behind it. And I mean, I know you can still buy physical PC games, but it's just a code.
Yeah.
Claim online.
No, it's almost entirely digital now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. All right. Real quick, what do you think would have happened, again, hypothetically, what do you think would have happened to gaming culture in general and specifically the PlayStation fandom? I mean, is the answer as simple as they would have sort of just dissolved into other platforms, or do you think there would be still kind of a hardcore group of PlayStation fans out there that would be kind of fueling their success? How strong do you think the PlayStation brand would have been to maintain its strength despite its poor performing exclusives?
Is there a group of Sega fans out there that are pushing for Sega titles?
Touche.
I don't know if there are. I mean, there's some, sure. I mean, like there's Sonic.
So you're saying
and
our fans are
Shenmue
fickle, and they're gonna go with whatever's good.
I guess.
I mean, that's true. That's human nature, right? Like Sony's got its brand recognition now, really on the back of its exclusives.
Right.
In theory, if those exclusives had sucked, then what would they have got? What would they have had? The strength, the great looking design of their consoles. PlayStations are kind of ugly, let's be real.
No, they're not. You shut your mouth.
Oh, okay, so there's you're one defender, one sole defender, and it's Termite of PlayStation in the hypothetical universe.
I absolutely love the look of the PlayStation 3 launch console, and I cannot wait to get mine back from the shop and have it on display somewhere. It is gorgeous. I like the look of the PlayStation 5 more than the Series X. Sorry. The way that they look is unique, and they are art pieces in and of themselves, except the PS4, which is just a little black box and doesn't make any sense. But PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 5 look amazing.
No, consoles in general look dumb, and if they didn't play such great games... Controller design's a different story, but consoles themselves, they're all boxes. They all have to be boxes, and that sucks. They don't look good. That's Penguin's hot take. Anyways, yeah. I think that, I mean, we've kind of hit on some of these things too, because, gaming industry is strongly influenced, gaming culture is strongly influenced by the industry. So a lot of the things that we've hit on where it's like gamers probably, if there's not good single player quality, blockbuster single player experiences, then aside from a few diehards, for the most part, if people are like, well, the good games are all multiplayer, we continue to see that trend in the culture, and it would just sort of be the new normal for games because there would be no competing the competition comparison. I also think there would be a strong contingent of the gaming culture that would just be longing for the good old days of the single player games. I think you'd see a lot more 2000s nostalgia setting in a way that it's there, but it's not quite there in the same way that I think it would have been if suddenly Sony exclusives were sucking. Then people would be longing for the good old days when games on PlayStation were good. So yeah,
then there'd be like a drove of indie games, stuff like I Am Setsuna and Messenger and Celeste. Like these games that are coming out now. Maybe there would be more. Maybe the indie market would fill that gap if there was no single player exclusives, because there would be so much market for nostalgia, early 2000s. So all of that would look different.
Yeah,
definitely.
I agree.
And gaming culture today, if you look out across the gaming people, it's Twitch, Discord, and Twitter. Like those are the three things that overlap more than anything else, and all of those are mobile and PC platforms. They use those platforms to stream consoles and talk about console gaming, but where are they? Where are they existing, and where are they exchanging? Where are they connecting? And it's going to be on Discord, it's going to be on Twitter, and it's going to be on Twitch. That's like the most. That's what's driving forward. And if you notice, those platforms have nothing to do with consoles.
Right. You can't. There's Twitter integration in some cases, but you can't just like, oh, I'm gonna go check Twitter. What are you pulling? What are you reaching for? You're reaching for your phone, or if you're already on a computer, you're pulling up a browser tab. Like you're not reaching for your PlayStation. Yeah, no, I get you. I think that's
and so consoles are using those platforms to help gamers connect with them, and that's helpful. But if you look at if you remove the single player pull to the console space completely, which Sony has clinched for lack of a better discussion, overgeneralization, and you remove that, then again, gamers would probably just go to PCs and mobile devices. Yeah.
Yep, I agree. Cool. All right, so let's take our last question here. I think it's a good one. I like this better than a lot of like, what do you think the future looks like? This is definitely more thought-provoking, I think. And so what can we learn from this speculation? Where's the value in this speculation? What can we learn about Sony's strategy? And what do you think Sony should do if all they're relying on is their exclusives? Where do you think Sony could shore up their other strengths if suddenly they were to face a season where their exclusives sucked? You know what I mean? Like, what would be the benefit of this kind of train of thought of relying less on exclusives? Or should they just double down? Should they just focus on that because they're filling in? You know what I mean? So that's kind of, what can we learn from this?
A bunch of thoughts. One, Sony should pay us because we basically just did a giant risk assessment on their entire platform. So there's that. Thank you. We'll take your money, Sony. That would be awesome.
Sony, I just want you to include me in a game. I don't even care about the money. I just want the glory. That's all.
I kind of want to get paid.
I do too. Yeah, that's it.
But then thinking of, that derailed my other thought. Hang on, it'll come back to me. Oh, right. We know if you look out at the gaming landscape, the games that make the most money are games like Fortnite, Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, and all the sports games, Madden, NHL, NBA 2K, etc. Those are the moneymakers as far as software is concerned. So if Sony had no first-party exclusives to lean on, it would be immediately to switch focus on courting those big third-party multiplayer games. Mm-hmm. So we already see Kratos and Aloy is now in Fortnite. Like, they have partnerships with Fortnite that are promoting the PlayStation brand. So that's making them tons of money. That's the Epic Games cash truck backing up into their, like, and just dumping money on them, because that's what that's going to do. And yeah, so they would just, let's get exclusive content out there for these big multiplayer games. And so let's make part of Call of Duty like time-gated exclusive on PlayStation to kind of drive the hardware for that so that people can get on Call of Duty first on PlayStation. And we already see these kind of deals sort of happening, but to really like grab, like MLB The Show, that was like the ubiquitous baseball game that is now third-party and going to Xbox for the first time. That's why that made big news. It's because that's a huge get for Microsoft away from Sony. But every single person who fires up MLB The Show on Game Pass is met with a PlayStation Studios splash screen. So that's more exposure for PlayStation. So it's stuff like that we would probably see if Sony's first-party stuff or single-player stuff started to tank, is that they would just shift focus on courting the third-party developers.
Right. So then how
big
could
platforms.
Sony, what would your suggestion to Sony in, the existing Sony that does have good exclusives, what would your suggestion along those lines be? Would it simply be to, hey, continue what you're doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, continue what you're doing with, trying to put more of your intellectual property out there without actually putting your intellectual property out there. Is that kind of what you're saying? Where it's like your partnerships with Fortnite, those are great because they give you exposure without actually forcing you to put put Horizon Zero Dawn on Xbox or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I think that it's along those similar lines. I think that what Sony could learn from Microsoft, in this timeline, and what Sony could learn from the speculation is their exclusives do sell well. Their exclusives are really valuable and people want to play them. They should consider the fact that they could make a lot of money by putting their exclusives on other platforms, even if they were timed exclusive. You know what I mean? Like the fact that they are putting Horizon Zero Dawn, and there's rumors that God of War will be coming to PC as well. Like, the fact that they are porting those to PC means that they do kind of understand that on some level of we can push hardware because people still want to play these games immediately when they come out, so they're going to want to have a PlayStation on hand. But some people are just, they're feet in the ground and they're never going to buy our stuff anyways. So why not make money off of them down the line and make our stuff available eventually on other platforms? I think that's a kind of a good idea for them to continue to do, and I think that it directly relates to this idea that we're talking about. If your games, any developer can have a bad run. We know this. We've seen it happen in the last couple of years. We've seen it happen on two significant occasions with BioWare and CD Projekt Red. No developer is immune to having a bad string of games and losing a lot of money. And if that were a season like that were to happen to Sony, it would be devastating for them. So consider the fact that exclusives should not necessarily be the single pillar of your entire revenue in that case.
And something else that Sony has done that's super, super smart is leveraging that Spider-Man IP. Remember, we have Insomniac Games is now an exclusive studio making the most amazing Spider-Man game ever made, and its sequel, Miles Morales, which is kind of a spin-off. But don't forget that Spider-Man is a timed exclusive in Marvel's Avengers. from Crystal Dynamics, which should not have flopped, but it did. But if it didn't, then Sony would have a huge stake in demand for people playing that game on PlayStation, because Spider-Man would be a timed exclusive. That's that DLC character added to the game on PlayStation first for a long time before Xbox can. And we have Deathloop, which was, of course, recently delayed, is also a timed exclusive on PlayStation. So Sony is also shoring up those third-party relationships to make sure there's a safety net. There's still streams of revenue and income and driving appeal and desire to get PlayStation consoles out there. And I think that's all part of the strategy coming together. What we talked about on our news show was that PlayStation is selling faster than any other console in U.S. history, and they'll hit 7.6 million units sold March 31st. That's crazy. That's crazy. But it is showing that Sony is doing both the two-pronged approach, courting first-party, going into the AAA stuff, which is what Jason Schreier's article, which led to the inspiration of this show, talked about, where they're favoring so much on these big, giant budget single-player games. We're kind of losing content. Like Days Gone 2 has gone by the wayside and kind of denied because Sony Bend was tasked with doing something else because who knows what, money. And that's kind of a bummer. And we can see Sony courting the idea of porting their games to PC, and now going to Xbox Game Pass, the MLB The Show. So we're seeing like the Sony strategy just going everywhere. They're hitting everything. It's timed exclusives on third party. It's the multiplayer stuff like Fortnite and cross-referencing each other and getting IP out there to other platforms. It's putting games on other platforms and timed exclusive. They're everywhere. And also doing the first party stuff. So Sony's covering it. Like there's nothing else I don't think Sony could be doing except maybe making a successor to the Vita. Like compete against the Switch too while you're at it, like, but I think that would spread them too thin if they were to have an entire R&D development cycle, like going after the Vita and trying to maintain that hardware and put another store out there and make sure everything's compatible and all of the authentication and certification that all the games have to go through and everything else that would have to be involved in another platform. But yeah, so Sony's killing it. Like they're going everywhere. They're hitting everything. Yep. I don't really know what else they could do. If I think they would be fine if their first party stuff started to flop.
All right. Well, we want to hear what your thoughts are, Pod Smashers and other listeners. We want to hear what your thoughts are on this what if. What if Sony exclusive sucked? What are we missing? Do you think it's a ridiculous question that Sony is going to be fine? Do you think that it's valid? Do you think that it would be devastating for them? We want to hear those thoughts and more. So Termite will once again remind you where you can find us if you want to engage with us and share your thoughts and feedback, and just otherwise where you can find us to talk and say hi.
Send us your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, and ideas over at 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website with links to all of our social media outlets as well as our podcasting platforms of your choice. You can hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit. We have a Discord server, and the link is in all of our show notes as well as on our website. And you can find us on twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash. Every Monday night, we do our news show. Every Wednesday night, we do a gameplay live stream at 8 p.m. Eastern. So you can jump and chat, interact with our audience there and our community. So please jump in, ask us, give us your thoughts, heckle us, troll us, tell us what you like. And I am actually going to do a search on the Apple Podcast reviews because we did a little thing where we wanted anyone who left a review on Apple Podcast would be read out loud. And I don't know when the last time we did that was.
We don't have not another one.
Have you looked?
I just looked right now, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Still no review since 2018, right? 2020.
2020.
We had Gamer Time. Yeah. And that was great. So maybe we should resurrect that again. I don't know. If you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, we are likely to read it. We can't make any promises, but we would love to have your reviews. That helps us get bubbled up in the algorithms so we can have more friendly faces like y'all in our show.
Yeah. All right. Next week, we're going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart due to recent revelations of my own brain. And we're going to be talking about gaming and different neurotypes. So you can find out what a neurotype is in the next episode. I'll sort of tease you that way. But yeah, we'll talk about that next week. That'll be episode 190, a crazy number, crazy number. And that'll air on May 10th. So we'll see you then.
See you next week.